Black Friday is just around the corner, as you all know, and so stores have started sort of putting out deals and getting themselves ready for the big Black Friday rush. And I think more and more these sorts of things are becoming online instead of in stores, with the typical American memes that we've all seen where people crush each other and all of that stuff. And so I think there's a lot of online sort of deals now that people can take advantage of. And one such store is, of course, Amazon. And so I thought I would build a PC today with the target of $300. So this is a budget PC, very budget. And this PC would sort of be able to play games, any game really, at low settings, at least at HD. So not a bad PC all in all, something that you could use for light gaming, high refresh rate gaming on esports titles, or you could give to your child to sort of play games that are a little bit less demanding, or you could play AAA games on, but you're probably going to be at medium settings for the most part, or low settings on the most demanding games. And so with something like this, you have two options. You can either go all the Intel, so that means DDR3, first first gen i7, second gen i5 or i7, third gen i5 or i7, because you do want to go quad core at least, or fourth gen i5 or i7. And there are some standout CPUs in this range. I mean, something like the 2500K is still okay for gaming, something like the 3770K, and same for the 4th gen i7s. So there are some good options, but of course now when you're talking about low budget, going DDR4 can be difficult. You can find good deals, but usually only second hand. Sometimes new when you get a good sale, but usually only second hand. And so I thought, okay, let's build a PC like that, an older style PC that does use DDR3 and does use sort of outdated technology. So, I'm not even sure if this would run Windows 11, so you might need Windows 10 for this. But if it's only for gaming, I mean, that's fine. But with that said, let's take a look at what I've put together and what I think this sort of PC would do and would be like. I think this PC, like I said, would be fine for light gaming, and you could even do some productivity or office work on it. So for the motherboard, I've gone with this, I'm not sure what brand this is. I think it might just be a generic motherboard that someone put together, but I sort of like the form factor. It's obviously it's small, it's mini ITX, but the way that they did this was quite smart. So you can, I didn't even realize this when taking a look at the PC, but you can even have an NVMe or a Wi-Fi card here. So that's actually quite cool to have that with all the compatibility. And then you have your, of course, your PCI Express slot. You have your DIMM slots for DDR3 RAM, and you have your 1155 CPU. So that does mean Gen 3. And with this, you get actually pretty good compatibility. So this is called a B75MS motherboard. And, these sorts of motherboards, you might struggle with drivers and stuff like that, but for the most part they are okay, and this also has USB 3 compatibility. So to sort of make good use of this small motherboard, and this is exciting because you can build a very small PC with low power draw and a low footprint all around. So to go with this, I've gone for the Core i5 3470. Now, this is a quad-core processor, and it does have 4 cores, 4 threads. So it's not going to be the best thing going into 2025, but for light gaming, it is still okay. Any quad-core really will do the job. Anything that is relatively modern. And there's not too much to be said about this. I wouldn't necessarily recommend you buy this, but if you are someone that just wants a cheap $300 PC, this might be a good option. But as I was going to say, the other option, and this is something I'll explore in a video to come, but the other option is, of course, going with modern APUs. This could also be a good option because that allows for future compatibility for upgrades. Whereas the graphics performance of something like this would be better because you get a dedicated GPU. But to make up for the price sort of comparison, in a Ryzen system, you don't have a dedicated GPU, but you do get sort of better, more modern processing, and obviously the option to upgrade to a better GPU down the line. But we'll talk about that a bit more in another video. I do think it's worth exploring the difference between these two options. For the RAM, we've gone with this Asian brand, Yongzhen Sheng, butchered that, 16 gigs of DDR3 RAM, and this is relatively fast for DDR3, coming in just under 2000 megahertz. And yeah, it's all in all, it's just RAM. It is a Black Friday deal, and this is supposed to be sort of like a cheap Black Friday PC. So yeah, RAM is RAM. There are more options, but this is just, the price is good, coming in at $20, and it's relatively fast for previous generations of RAM, and 16 gigs is going to be more than fine for this computer. Moving on to the CPU cooler, because the CPU, I don't think I mentioned, but the CPU is renewed. So if you can find a cheaper 1155 CPU somewhere, buy that. But $27 for the CPU is not too bad. So we do need to get our own cooler, so we're going with the Thermaltake Gravity, but at this point you can just go for whatever's cheapest. This is just above $10, so it's not going to break the bank. So I would say going for something like this is probably a good idea. But there are more options if you like other aesthetics, other options. There are a lot to choose from. This is just something cheap because it doesn't really matter too much how it looks. Okay, the big one, the graphics card. Now, as I was saying, when choosing a PC like this, you have to consider APU versus GPU, but with the caveat of an expense to future upgradability and future options for, getting the PC to be more up to date. Now, this is a 1063 gig. One thing I will say about Amazon is when it comes to cheaper graphics cards, they don't have the best options, because you could get second hand, you could get a 1066 gig for less than this price. You could get that for about $70, maybe even $60. So I wouldn't necessarily do this, but for the sake of this video, Black Friday deals and mostly new parts, if I found a renewed one on this, I would have used it, but I didn't find one. So I'm not saying you should do this. I would say go for a second-hand card. Maybe if you could get a 1070 second-hand for around this price, I would do that. But something like this will be okay for performance in terms of, like I said, low graphics, 45, 50 FPS gameplay on most AAA games, and high refresh rate gaming on games like Counter-Strike, Rocket League, Rainbow Six, those kinds of games. So to reiterate, I wouldn't necessarily buy this, but you could look at similar options for better prices. But this is not a bad deal for a brand new card, even if it is an older card. But I wouldn't buy a 3 gig card in 2024. I would probably see if you can find the 6 gig variant. To be honest, I didn't even notice it was the 3 gig variant. And coming in at around $100 in the second-hand market, there are a lot of better options. Okay, for the power supply, I've really just gone for the cheapest one that has a decent output. And these Thermaltake power supplies aren't the best, but they're not the worst. 80 plus watt, 500 watts, it's fine. It'll do the job, and it's not going to break the bank either, because this is coming in at $40, which is a good deal. I would even use this for a more demanding system. It's too much for this system, but it's the cheapest one coming in around this price for this performance. So that's a good deal. Black Friday deal on this as well. Okay, for the case. Now this is sort of, again, the price is good. I like this case. I like that you can remove these dust filters, and then it has like this mesh metallic industrial look to it that I like a lot. It comes with a fan. It's a nice looking case. It's unique. It's small. It fits micro ATX, mini ITX, and it's just all in all, I think it's a good case. My brother actually had a case like this maybe about 5 years ago, and he seemed to like it. It fits decent sized graphics cards. It fits a full power supply, I believe, and so all in all, it's a good option when it comes to cases. And coming in at $38, that's a really good price, because these cases usually are quite expensive for these smaller ones. It's sort of become like a gimmick. So it's a good price that this one is around this, and you wouldn't even have to buy more fans or anything. I think this is good to go as is. Finally, the storage. I've just gone for what's cheap. You probably need more storage, but coming in at $16, another Black Friday deal, a 256 gigabyte, it's okay for a little bit. If you're going to be playing games like Counter-Strike, Rocket League, Dota, LoL, these games aren't massive, and you can even throw in a few AAA games. Now your GTAs, your Last of Us's, your Days Gone, these are big games. So what I would recommend is getting a cheap hard drive, $10, getting a cheap hard drive and throwing that in there for the bigger games. You will have to wait for loading times, but this isn't the fastest system anyway, so that's just a reality of gaming with a system like this. So that's what I would do. This is a relatively fast SSD. It's not the best in the world, but it's another good Black Friday deal, coming in at $16. So all in all, this PC, it costs $302, which, right around that 300 range that we set for ourselves. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the price. I think the graphics card could be better. I think the CPU could be better. Where's the graphics card? I think the CPU could be better. The graphics card could be better. But if you could upgrade to a i7-3770K and a 1070 for around the same price, if you can find those second hand, that's going to be a relatively good PC still. I mean, for HD gaming, you'll even play AAA games at medium-high settings with that system. So all in all, not bad. Let's see how it does in terms of gaming performance and if it will stand up to today's games. Let's do it. Okay, so this is a YouTube video showing the performance of the system, and getting right into it here, thank you to Dabney XD for the video, and this is the one that I'm using. So this system is precisely the system we have. We have a i5-3470, we have a GTX 1063 gigabyte, and we have 16 gigs of RAM. I believe it's 16 gigs of RAM, but this is using 9 gigs, so at least 12. So it's going to be similar. Now, in Uncharted 4, which is a very new, well, not very, but it's a new AAA game, 1080p medium with FSR quality. We are getting around 40 FPS, maybe a little bit more in some cases. And it looks decent. It doesn't look bad. And I think this is a more than playable result. I would probably drop down to low and switch off FSR. That's how I would play it. But all in all, it's not a bad result. Getting around 50 now, and it seems more than playable. Okay. Next up, we have the Resident Evil 4 remake. Now, this might be a little bit difficult. So, this is running on 1080p low, and it is getting in the 30s to 40s. And I do think that that's to be expected with these kinds of games. And that's why I say you would probably be better off getting a i7-3770K and going for a 1068 gigabyte, because that's going to allow you to just up that texture resolution to high while still running everything else on medium or low, but it's just going to look a lot better, and it's just going to make for a better experience. But for the kinds of games that we have in mind, I think that this would be fine. And Resident Evil Village is a little bit older, 1080p medium, running in the 50s. I mean, that's a good result. The game looks good, and that's a good showcase of how demanding games can still be playable on a system like this. And that frame time is pretty smooth as well. And yeah, I mean, this is quite a good result. Not as demanding, but still relatively demanding. You could even run this on high and have a playable result. Okay, moving on to, let's do Days Gone. That's a game I like very much. So Days Gone, running at 1080p high, seems to be in the 40s to 60s, which is quite a good result. I mean, 1080p high, the game looks fantastic. There's a lot going on, and this just proves that, older systems can still play games. You're not going to get high refresh rates, you're not going to get the smoothest frame times in the world, although this looks fine, but you can still play games with older systems. I think sometimes the train of you have to have the newest thing becomes just it just becomes too much, and it's not always realistic. I mean, this is a scene where zombies are chasing you and you are still getting in the 50s at high, so you don't always need the newest thing. You can still enjoy games on older systems, and this just proves it. Next up, Red Dead Redemption is a good one to look at, and it is the most replayed one. I think that's the sort of game that most people want to see. So this is favoring quality at 1080p, and it's running in the 30s. Now, this is another game where a 1070 would be good because of that 8 gigabytes of VRAM. This seems okay because it's more of a cinematic game, but I would probably drop down to favoring performance and getting in the 40s at least, maybe 45. But this looks nice. It seems playable. I would probably just prefer a little bit of a higher frame rate. The frame time also isn't fantastic. God of War, another AAA game, getting around 40 to 50, 1080p medium, original, and this looks amazing. And yeah, I mean, this is another showcase of why a PC like this is still viable. I mean, this PC is very much in the same realm as a PlayStation 4, but a PC can just do more in terms of away from gaming. Now, if I was just a gamer, I would maybe go for the PlayStation 4 because I think it would be a bit cheaper and you get more extras. But for doing production, productivity work, admin, office work, whatever it might be, even a little bit of light video editing, a PC is just better. Spider-Man Remastered, 1080p medium. And this is getting quite a high frame rate. Getting in the 60s to 100, 1080p medium. I would probably put this on 1080p high and just game at like 40s, maybe 50s. But I mean, this is another showcase of why this PC is still valid. Let's take a look at GTA. GTA we know is a little bit older, so it'll run fine, getting 60s at Ultra. So that's a good result. Most people buy these sort of PCs to play games like Red Dead Redemption and GTA 5. So good result on this one. Watch Dogs, no. Let's do Far Cry 5. So we are getting 60s at 1080p Ultra on Far Cry 5. That's pretty good. Anything above like 45 to me is okay. So, Resident Evil 4, it's the only game so far that doesn't really seem playable. But everything else seems honestly fine. I mean, we aren't using a lot of our RAM. As long as you don't cap, as long as you switch off the textures a little bit lower, maybe medium, I think you'll be fine. Battlefield V we know would run well. Metro would run okay. Ghost Runner, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Just Cause, and Witcher. Let's do Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So this is a modern game. We haven't even looked at esports games, but this just proves that you don't even have to look at them because you know you're going to get above 100 for most of them, and that's fine for high refresh rate gaming. If you can get like up to like 120 to 140, you'll be fine. And this is running at 1080p highest. And it's another good looking game, getting around 40 to 60, so it's a good result, very playable. If you compare this to a PlayStation 4, even a PlayStation 4 Pro, this is just, it's better, more variety of games, better performance overall, and don't have too much to complain about for the price. I mean, this is $300. Lastly, let's take a look at The Witcher 3: A Wild Hunt. Another game that people love to play on these older systems. 1080p Ultra, 50 FPS, fantastic, not much to complain about. And so, sort of to see out the video, this just proves that a system like this is still very valid. A system like this, quad-core CPU, more than a decade old at this point, a 3 gigabyte GPU. Now I would go for the 6 gigabyte. That's what I would prefer to do because you'll just be able to switch the textures a little bit higher for games. RAM seems like 12 gigs would be fine because none of these games are even going above 10. So, and you can play these games at relatively high frame rates. Seems like you can get between 40 to 100 frames in most of these games, if not all of them. And it's just overall, the more I do these videos, the more I realize you don't really need the latest thing if you're just a gamer. I mean, it's nice to have and it's fancy, and there are some games that you're not going to be able to play. I mean, that is just realistic. Newer games coming out now, it's going to be a little bit difficult, like Stalker 2 or Helldivers or whatever it might be. But if you're okay with playing games that are a little bit older but still really good, lots of fun, I would get something like this. I think it's more than fine, and you can still have a lot of fun with these sorts of systems. I'm going to be doing a lot of these sorts of videos in the coming week. Going to be looking at Black Friday deals for different stores and building PCs like this. So this is the first one in the series. This is the $300 PC on Amazon. Next up, I'll do a $300 PC on AliExpress, eBay, maybe some local South African stores as well. So with that said, thanks for watching. Game on, and don't let anyone tell you that your older PC isn't valid, because it is. See you in the next one.